Hey, welcome to another episode of DOCasts. In this episode, we're going to get a quick scaffold up for our Rails application so it doesn't have this default Rails application homepage. And that will give us a better idea of what our blog could look like if we continued developing it. Now, for this, you're going to need a beginner's knowledge in Rails. So basically, I've already set up my new Rails app, and I've set it up with POW in the previous episode so that we can get to it via http://blog.dev. That way we can see this rather than having to type in localhost :3000 all the time and having to continuously run our Rails server. We just go ahead and put that blog.dev into our URL, and we're able to get to this. If you don't have a basic knowledge in Rails, I recommend checking out Michael's tutorial on Ruby on Rails. It's in the 3rd edition, so it's now covering Rails 4.2. You can either buy it now, and I recommend supporting Michael here. Once you're really getting into your development career, go ahead and buy this. Michael's done a great job with his Ruby on Rails tutorial book here. But until then, you can read it online for free. So definitely check this out just to get a beginner's knowledge on Ruby on Rails. This definitely goes into more advanced things later on. But I believe if you read just the first chapter, maybe the 2nd chapter at the most, you should be able to follow along with the episode that we're holding here. And basically what we're doing is we're getting our Rails application set up and ready to go ahead and deploy it on our DigitalOcean droplet. So let's go ahead and continue, and we'll create a scaffold for our Rails application, our blog here. So I'll go into terminal, and as you can see, I'm within my blog directory. I can list out the files in this directory here, and from this directory I can start running my Rails commands. So if I went ahead and typed in Rails G, which is shorthand for generate, and just clicked on enter, Rails will give us some commands on what we can run. And what we want to do here is we want to run a scaffold, and that will create a model controller and some views for us so we don't have to go in and create each and every one of them. Now, this is not a best practice for creating controllers, views, and models within your Rails application, but for the sake of simplicity, this is what we're going to do. Again, if you're not familiar with Rails, check out chapters 1 and 2 in the Ruby on Rails tutorial. So with that said, we'll run Rails G for Rails generate. Then we'll go ahead and type in scaffold here. And what will the scaffold create for us? Well, it's going to create the model controller and the view for our blog's post. So instead of typing blog in here, we'll go ahead and we'll put post. Then we'll put in the fields that we're going to need for the database and in the view. So what we're going to do is we'll type in title. That's going to be a string. And we're going to type in the body or content, you could say, and we'll pass through text. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Ruby on Rails, a scaffold is like a construction framework. So Rails is going to put that framework up for us, and we can go through and we can edit that framework, which is like when you're building a house or something. And then we're putting that framework up for the post model that we're going to be setting within our database. So post, that is plural, Rails is going to add an S to that, is going to be our table in our database. And in that table, we're going to have title, which is going to be a string. So this tells our database how to store it. And then we're going to have a body, which is text, again telling Rails telling our database how it's going to store it. So I'll just go ahead and I'll click on enter. It's going to set up all of that information for us. We have the views here, we have the controller, and we have the models, which I believe is up a little bit. So models here. Now let's quickly go through this. The models are basically the code that's going to be interacting with the database. Then we have the views, which is what people will see when they go to your web page. And then we have the controller, which is like an air traffic controller, signaling where certain actions need to go and how certain things should behave. And those three work together. So the controllers, the views, and the models, they work together to go ahead and provide the end user, your visitors, with the end result, so what they're going to see on the web page itself. All right, so the next thing we have to do is we have to migrate the scaffold so that it is applied to our database. And by default, since we didn't set up anything in terms of MySQL or Postgres, it's going to go ahead and it's going to use SQLite. So we'll go ahead and we'll run rake db migrate, and that's going to migrate our database. And as you can see, it created a table within our database titled posts. Did that in 0.0014 seconds. And if we take a look at our schema here, which is basically how Rails is interpreting and how Rails keeps track of our database, if we take a look at that using less db schema, it's going to show us that we have a create table. So it created a table posts, and it gave us the title, the body, then also assigned a created at and an updated at column for us within our database. So I'll quit out of this and let's move forward. So the next thing we want to do is we want to open up our routes file. So we'll go into our config directory, we'll open up routes.rb, and instead of it loading that default Rails page here, let's change this up. We want it to instead give us the post index. So it's going to route to the post index. Okay. And then we're going to save this out. And now if we refresh the page, we should have seen it, but it's giving us an error. So the post controller. All right. So we need to go back into the routes and we need to specify posts, plural. Oops. Let's write and quit. We'll go back into that and let's refresh the page. All right, now it's giving us our posts page. Now we can go ahead and we can add in different posts here. So we'll create a post. The title is going to be first post in our blog, and then I'll use some dummy text here and I'll create our posts. So it's giving us our title and the body for our post. If we go back, we'll see that it's listing this out for us. We have the title, the body, then the ability to show the individual post, edit the individual post, or destroy the post. Now I'm going to do this a couple times. So I'm going to pause the video and do this a couple times that we have some information to deal with here. All right, so I've created a second post and a third post, all with dummy text here. And if you wanted to, you could definitely style this up here. We could probably move the title above the body and the show and edit and destroy. And only administrators can destroy or edit these posts and so on and so forth. But since this is not a Rails tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and move forward. The next thing we want to do in the next episode is we want to commit these changes to a Git repo. And that will allow us to push these changes up to a external repo such as bitbucket.org or github.com. And it'll allow us to go ahead and pull from that repo. And if we work in teams, those teams to pull and edit through that repo. It'll allow our server or droplet to pull from that repo, the master branch, and it'll allow us to use Capistrano or maybe another deployment script to pull from it and update your application with hopefully zero downtime. So with that said, in the next episode, we're going to be going into Bitbucket. Now here's a few things that I'd like you to do before that episode. Is if you go to bitbucket.org, you should be able to create a free account. I love Bitbucket. It allows you to create an unlimited amount of private code repositories that you don't have to leave out in the open, like github.com will force you to do unless, of course, you pay. But it allows you to do it for free, and you can even work in a small team of 5 users. Now, it's free for up to 5 users, and that's great for startups. This is great for solopreneurs and entrepreneurs that are just getting started. It's compatible with both Mac and Windows clients. And icing on the cake for this, they even offer the ability to use their Get client for both Windows and Mac, which is known as SourceTree. So if you click on SourceTree on the bottom here, it'll be taken to the page that looks like this. You can download either the Mac version or the Windows version, and it looks just like this. And it's amazing. If you're getting started with Git, you can use a client like this to give you a better mental association of the different commands in Git and what the different actions do. So definitely get started with Bitbucket here. Create your free account. If you're familiar with SSH keys, go ahead and create your SSH keys. I'll cover SSH keys in a future episode, probably not in this series, but SSH keys just make it so much easier to push GET repositories, to log into your DigitalOcean droplets, log into your VPS servers, and so on and so forth. So this is something that you're going to want to know. And again, last but not least, if you haven't checked out the Ruby on Rails tutorial by Michael, go ahead and do so. Read through the first or second chapters. That should do it for this episode. But I'll see you in the next episode, and be ready to get started with GET.